Is the United States currently preparing for an Israel-Iran war? Well, it's starting to look like it. Unfortunately, it looks like the Biden regime is tipping its way towards kind of giving its blessing in all of this. Just yesterday, also approved a $2 billion weapons sales deal for Israel, including 50 fighter jets. Now, of course, we've been warning you guys as well. It looks like Iran might actually start attacking Israel directly, not through Hezbollah alone. And it's very, very concerning. But the Biden regime isn't doing anything to stop this, of course. Instead, they're funding both sides. Well, they're funding them directly to Israel, I should say specifically. And they're also providing them with endless weapons, which again is putting our military at risk, but that's a whole nother discussion. But when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East, Americans are weighing in on this because, well, they just really don't trust Biden or Kamala Harris when it comes to this. And we know all of it because of this new Rasmussen Reports poll that just recently came out that highlights just that. Take a look at this. 89% of likely U.S. voters tell Rasmussen that they currently consider the situation going on in the Middle East a crisis. 53% of voters trust Trump over Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris only garnishing about 40% of their trust when it comes to this Middle Eastern conflicts that are currently going on, I should say. And 54% trust Trump more than Kamala Harris when it comes to handling Middle Eastern policies. Joining me to discuss all of this is Rasmussen Reports' Mark Mitchell, is the head pollster over there. So he's going to break down all these numbers for us. Mark, thank you for jumping on. I think the Middle Eastern polling is really interesting, just given the fact that tensions that are at an all-time high right now. We are kind of fueling both sides of these fights. And now we're seeing that there was just this $20 billion approval for weaponry for Israel. So you guys are saying right now, and the timing is absolutely perfect, that the American people favor President Trump when it comes to the Middle Eastern conflicts, resolving those, than they do with Kamala Harris. What are you seeing in your data?
So to me, the Middle East has been a little bit of a sleeper issue. The inflation in the economy and the border have always been the top issues. Global conflicts and war in Ukraine and all of those have always been single digits, basically, when you ask voters what issues they care about. And if this blows up, this is going to be a really big deal for Kamala Harris because, as we know, Kamala Harris and Biden underperformed Trump on the issues of the economy and on the border. But Joe Biden always did kind of well in the national security realm. His ratings on Ukraine, his ratings on national security were always, good and excellent numbers combined in the low 40s, but he'd be in the low 20s on the border. So it was one of his better strong suits. But the problem is that people trust Donald Trump more than Kamala Harris on this issue. And if anybody here watching listened to the Donald Trump, Elon Musk interview on Twitter, I think it's very clear that that's one narrative that we might be hearing more of, especially if the Middle East blows up, is that we need a strong leader as a president. And when you hide and duck tough interviews, you do not exude confidence and strong leadership. And one of the biggest standout numbers here to me is that in the question, who do you trust more on handling the Middle East? All we hear about is that Donald Trump is losing the woman vote. But here, women trust Donald Trump more than Kamala Harris, just as much as men. It's 53 to 41%. Among 18 to 39-year-olds, it's 49% to 39%. Democrats, only 75% of them trust Kamala Harris more, but Republicans, it's 87%. And Donald Trump has a 20-point lead among independents. That's absolutely crazy. And that crisis question is very important as well, because 66% say a major crisis, 89% say a crisis. Those numbers are way bigger than when we ask about whether the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border is a crisis. So all of a sudden, and I don't know if this is recent, we don't necessarily have the history on this question, but that is a really big deal. And we also asked, how concerned are you the situation in the Middle East may require military action by the U.S.? And we get 80% concerned, 44% very concerned, and 76% independents. We also have been asking questions about other things in the news, like Tim Walz, and let me tell you, only 60% of voters think that his stolen ballot accusations are important at all. So if we see more of the Middle East in the news, it's going to be very bad for Democrats.
Yeah, and honestly, that's how I've been kind of viewing things. Again, though, they have the side of the media well, they have the media on their side, I should say. And it's deeply concerning. We just discussed all of this with Mike Ben just a few moments ago, how Kamala Harris is manipulating headlines and their campaign ads, and they're being pushed at the top of Google searches because, well, apparently the biased media, who's literally always been on her side, isn't going far enough. And so she has to manipulate these headlines. But it also to do with the polling. And I'm really getting upset because the polls that are coming out right now seem to make it appear like Kamala Harris is somewhat favorable in swing states. So I want to get your take on all of this because you've been doing these polls since she was announced as their new top of the ticket candidate. It looks like they're saying that Kamala Harris is going to give President Trump a run for his money. But you've been polling this for quite some time. What are you guys seeing?
Don't believe it. Don't believe it at all. We all know that the mainstream media organizations are corrupt and holding water for the Democrats. I'm here to tell you that the polling industry is doing it as well. And it makes sense because most of these, trickle up to the same legal entities that control all of the news. And the biggest scandal that we've been banging the drum about is the fact that nobody is putting out national polls at all right now. In the last 12 days, there's been less national polling of the race than there were in like a random week in March. Kamala Harris just got nominated. She just picked the vice presidential candidate. There's been like 2 non-Rasmussen national polls out there. And the reason why that's important, as you just put up the graphic, is that we are the only pollster that isn't hiding in our ivory tower. We poll every night on Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and we're of limited means. If we can do this, trust me, the New York Times can do this too. Where are their numbers? The reason you don't see their numbers is because they're showing exactly what you see in this chart. Kamala Harris had a good night or two after she got anointed, but her lead has faded, and now Donald Trump is beating her in our numbers from 3 to 5%. We're putting out our weekly, aggregate of the last 5 nights of data tomorrow. I'm pretty sure it's going to say Trump's up 3 or 4 points nationally in the multi-way, maybe even 5 points in a two-way. That's basically where we had Donald Trump and Joe Biden a month ago. But what's different between now and then is that back when we had Trump up, let's just say 5, the Real Clear Politics aggregate had Trump up 3.5. So we were not that far off. The Real Clear Politics aggregate has Harris almost up 1 point right now. And it is not because of a flood of of Harris positive polling. It's because they polled 2 weeks ago and they've been sitting on the responses. It's really crazy to see what's happening. You have outfits like Cook putting out polling, and they released data that's 2 weeks old. We're like 80 days to the election. You can't put out polls that are 2 weeks old. It's crazy. And also, I would not have your viewers freak out at all about state polling. State polling's harder than national polling. There's a lot of ways you can bury bodies in there. The polls are usually smaller, and it's really hard for other people in the industry to sort of idiot check those numbers. We'll have swing state polls out end of this week, maybe at the latest beginning of next week. I'm pretty confident in our numbers. But the point to me is look at the national numbers, and the aggregate had Joe Biden losing by 3+ points a month ago. Kamala Harris is probably not going to do much better than that. And that is a 10-point swing from where the national popular vote was 4 years ago. So it's like just take your average favorite swing state and imagine what that swing state would look like with Trump doing 10 points better than he was doing 4 years ago. And do yourself a favor and don't look at New York Times Siena.
It's funny. Newsweek, I didn't even click it because I knew it was clickbait. They put up a headline saying that Kamala Harris actually has a chance of winning Florida. But here in the state of Florida, since I live here, I'm very well aware of our politics. I know damn well that we have about 1 million, almost 1 million more registered Republicans than Democrats. And I haven't seen a single person sporting a Kamala Harris banner, flag, any of that. Every single day I drive on 95 and the overpass, it's all Trump signs. People
Yeah.
are in Florida more energetic for Trump. So that's why, again, it feels like they're kind of conditioning your mind to accepting voter fraud. And Mark, before we go, I wanted to get to that because you actually just did a poll as well in Rasmussen. It says that 55% of likely U.S. voters believe it's likely that non-citizens are illegally registered to vote in the state where they live. Now that's concerning, but what's also concerning is 78% of voters would support their state government doing an audit of the voter registration and removing all non-citizens from their voter rolls. Now, the only reason why I think that's concerning is because, we're a couple of weeks away from Election Day. This should have been done a long time ago, and I know a lot of states are playing catch up now on that.
Well, anybody who follows our Twitter feed knows that we've been banging the drum on this issue as well for the
Mm.
last 4 years, and it's gotten us a lot of negative attention, hit
Yeah.
pieces by the Washington Post, demonetization on YouTube, yada, yada, yada. How can you be an accurate pollster if you ignore the possibility that there's election integrity problems? So this comes after we also found that two-thirds of voters think it's likely that the outcome of 2024 is going to be stolen. So a strong majority of voters, way more than would vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, think that it's likely that non-citizens are registered to vote in the state. And believe it or not, the highest number in there is Hispanic voters, who by
Mm.
70% say that it's at least somewhat likely, 41% say very likely, and the independent number is pretty high too, 57%. So this is also fascinating because there's strong bipartisan support for cleaning up the voter rolls. But the thing is that this is one of those situations where Democrats do poll like everybody else. They do not like cheating. They like law and order. They really don't necessarily like the invasion at the southern border, but they've just been told that defending democracy is more important. And so the media has really been effective at using that laser pointer to deflect the country away from this. Is a no-brainer here. I mean, it's really incredible. What's this number for Democrats? 67% of Democrats at least somewhat support cleaning up the voter rolls. Only 26% at least somewhat oppose. And independents, it's like 83%. Republicans, it's 86. Like, get it done already. Why can't people cross over the aisle and just do this, right? And in the states, I mean, like an easy win. 85% of voters say only U.S. citizens should be allowed to vote. There's only 11% of crazy people in this country who say no to that. And even Democrats, 81% say yes, 11% say no. Same number of Democrats say no to that as Republicans. Time and time again, there are things we can do that everybody would love to clean up our elections. But time and time again, I keep polling and finding all kinds of garbage. And I think that the elite, the deep state, the blob, whatever you want to call it, enjoys having the fog of war in our election systems.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with that at this point. It's very obvious, and they could sit there and do whatever they want. We just actually had America First Legal on just a couple of days ago, Gene Hamilton, one of their executive directors over there, and they're suing now Maricopa County because Maricopa County has over 23 non-verified citizens on their voter rolls, and they sent them a warning to get rid of them, and they didn't do so. So now they have to
Yeah.
sue. But the problem with that is I think Arizona was technically 10,000 was the margin between that. So 10,000 voters is what decided Arizona back in 2020. So it's a very, very serious issue. And again, they just don't seem to take it seriously on the left. The
Yeah.
politicians wise, though, their voters do, obviously. But we'll see as we get closer how this is going to kind of work its way through. I know America First Legal is aggressively working. They even cited you too. I believe it was on their website as well. Rasmussen Reports poll, the last one you guys did before this one,
Yeah.
and it's just really upsetting that this is continuing to go on. It looks like it's a bipartisan issue when it comes to the voters itself. But the politicians, on the other hand, they're not allies when it comes to making sure that non-U.S. citizens do not vote. So it's
Yeah,
very
we'll
interesting.
continue to poll on this. In our swing state poll, we showed that 5.3% of the national electorate, a pretty big poll, said that they are not citizens and they voted in the 2020 election. We're going to be asking that question again this week as we're in the field in our big swing state poll. It'll be interesting to see the results. But the implication there is that about 7 million people say they're not citizens and they say they voted in the 2020 election. That's an incredible number, even bigger than the number of fabricated ballots in Maricopa that were printed on the wrong kind of paper. So, and that's just one of the possible places that fraud has come from in all of the polling we've done.
Yeah, yeah. No surprise, no surprise. Again, to our audience, I want to remind you guys, Mark has a great YouTube channel. I recommend you head over there to Rasmussen Reports. Take a look. There's tons of polls that he's analyzing all the time on there, so make sure you subscribe as well. That link is in the description of this interview, so make sure you head over there to subscribe. Mark, thank you for jumping on with me. I appreciate it all the time when you come on, you break down these polls, because it's important not just to see the number, but to find out what's behind the number. So thank you. You guys know it's my job to keep you in the know, so I've got to keep you in the know when it comes to great sales. And there's one going on right now that you're going to want to take a look at. It's over at mypillow.com. Mike Landale has his $25 extravaganza going on right now. So you're going to want to take a look around because there's towels, there's pillows, there's sandals, there's slippers. So many of the items that you guys love at home are on sale right now. The best promo code to use when you head on over there is BRE, that's BRE. So when you're there and taking a look around at all of the items that he has on sale, make sure you plug in that promo code. It's going to save you up to 66% off. So head on over to mypillow.com and use that promo code if you're looking to save up to 66%.